Disabled kid's first dance step, this billionaire won't forget it. The music stopped. Every eye in the grand ballroom turned toward the wheelchair in the corner, where 12-year-old Marcus sat with tears streaming down his face. The billionaire tech mogul Richard Blackstone had just publicly humiliated him in front of 300 guests at the charity gala. But what happened next, what this powerful man witnessed in that moment, would shatter everything he thought he knew about strength, courage, and what it truly means to stand tall. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary miracles happen when we least expect them. And sometimes, a single step can change two lives forever. Marcus Williams was not supposed to be at the Blackstone Foundation's annual charity gala. The 12-year-old had been wheelchair-bound since a car accident 3 years earlier took his ability to walk and claimed his mother's life. He lived now with his grandmother in a modest apartment across town, surviving on her small pension and the kindness of neighbors. But tonight was different. Tonight, Marcus had saved every penny from helping elderly Mrs. Chen with her groceries, every dollar from returning lost items to their owners, every cent he could scrape together to buy the cheapest ticket available. Because this wasn't just any charity event. This was a gala for children with disabilities, and the guest of honor was supposed to be the famous dancer Elena Rodriguez, who had overcome her own physical challenges to become a world-renowned performer. Marcus had dreamed of meeting her, of asking her how she found the courage to dance again after her accident. But Elena had canceled at the last minute. Richard Blackstone stood at the podium, adjusting his $1,000 tie, his cold gray eyes scanning the crowd of wealthy donors. At 52, he had built his tech empire through ruthless efficiency and an absolute intolerance for what he called emotional weakness. To him, this charity gala was nothing more than a tax write-off and a photo opportunity. He had never experienced true hardship. He had never known loss. And he was about to learn a lesson that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Ladies and gentlemen, Blackstone's voice boomed through the microphone, we're here tonight to help these unfortunate children. But let's be honest about what we're really doing. Marcus felt his stomach drop as the man's words took a darker turn. We're here to feel better about ourselves. To throw money at problems we don't understand. These children. He gestured dismissively toward the section where Marcus sat with other young attendees. They need to learn that life isn't fair. That dreams don't always come true. That sometimes acceptance of your limitations is the kindest gift you can give yourself. The room grew uncomfortably silent. Several guests shifted in their seats. Take that boy there, Blackstone pointed directly at Marcus, his finger like a weapon. In the wheelchair. I'm sure he has dreams of running, of playing sports, of dancing like the performer who was supposed to be here tonight. But wouldn't it be crueler to feed those impossible fantasies than to help him accept reality? Marcus felt 300 pairs of eyes on him. His face burned with shame and anger. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, others uncomfortable. Mr. Blackstone, interrupted Dr. Sarah Chin, the event coordinator, perhaps we should focus on the positive aspects of. No, Blackstone cut her off. I'm tired of this sugar-coated nonsense. These children need truth, not fairy tales. He stepped closer to Marcus, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. What's your name, son? Marcus's voice barely whispered, Marcus. Marcus what? Marcus Williams. Well, Marcus Williams, what did you want to be when you grew up? Before your situation? The question hung in the air like poison. Marcus's hands gripped his wheelchair handles so tightly his knuckles went white. The man was asking him to expose his deepest wound in front of strangers. I wanted to dance. A few people in the crowd made sympathetic sounds, but Blackstone's expression hardened. Dance? He repeated mockingly. And now you're here hoping for what? A miracle? Magic? Let me tell you something, Marcus Williams. Dreams like yours are dangerous. They keep you from accepting what you are and finding realistic goals. Tears began to stream down Marcus's face, but something else flickered in his eyes. Something Blackstone didn't recognize. Determination. But what none of them knew, what even Marcus had hidden from everyone except his grandmother, was that for the past 6 months, something impossible had been happening. Dr. Peterson had called it neurological recovery anomaly. The feeling had started as tiny tingles in Marcus's legs during his physical therapy sessions. Sensations that weren't supposed to exist. Muscles that had been declared permanently damaged were somehow responding to electrical stimulation. But the doctor said it was impossible. The spinal cord damage was too severe. Any sensation Marcus thought he felt was phantom pain, psychological wishful thinking. So Marcus had stopped telling them about the feelings. He had stopped mentioning that sometimes late at night, he could swear his toes were moving under his blankets. He had only told his grandmother the truth 3 weeks ago, when she found him attempting to stand in his bedroom, gripping the windowsill with white knuckles, his legs trembling with the effort of supporting his weight for nearly 30 seconds. "Baby," she had whispered, "how long has this been happening?" "I don't know, Grandma. I was scared to hope. I was scared it wasn't real." They had made a pact. They would keep it secret until Marcus was sure. Until he could be certain that his body was truly healing itself in ways that defied medical explanation. Tonight, listening to Richard Blackstone's cruel words, Marcus felt something he had never experienced before. Righteous anger. The kind of anger that moves mountains. The kind of anger that performs miracles. But what happened next would shock everyone in that ballroom, including Marcus himself. "You want to know about accepting reality?" Marcus's voice suddenly rang out clear and strong, cutting through Blackstone's next word. The billionaire blinked, surprised by the interruption. "I know about reality," Marcus continued, his hands releasing the wheelchair handles. "I know about losing everything that matters to you in one night. I know about doctors telling you that you'll never walk again, never run again, never dance again." He leaned forward slightly and several people in the crowd noticed something strange. His legs seemed to shift position. "But you know what else I know about, Mr. Blackstone? I know about not giving up." And then, impossible as it seemed, Marcus Williams placed his hands on the armrests of his wheelchair and began to stand. The room erupted in gasps. Someone dropped their champagne glass, the crystal shattering on the marble floor like the sound of breaking assumptions. Marcus's legs shook with the tremendous effort, but they held. After 3 years in a wheelchair, after being told by every doctor that his spinal cord damage was permanent and complete, Marcus Williams was standing. But he wasn't done. As Richard Blackstone stared in shock, his mouth hanging open, Marcus took his first step. Then another. His movements were unsteady, his balance precarious, but there was no denying what everyone was witnessing. The boy was walking. 3 months ago, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger even as his legs trembled with exertion, "I started feeling things I wasn't supposed to feel. 2 months ago I could wiggle my toes. 1 month ago I could stand for a few seconds." He took another step toward the center of the ballroom, and the crowd parted like water. "Last week I took my first steps in 3 years. But I was scared. I was scared people wouldn't believe me. I was scared it might go away." Another step. Then another. "But tonight, listening to you tell me and every other child here that dreams are dangerous, that hope is cruel, tonight I realized something." Marcus stopped in the center of the ballroom, directly under the grand chandelier. The light caught the tears on his face, but they were no longer tears of shame. They were tears of triumph. Sometimes miracles happen not despite our brokenness, but because of how we choose to respond to it. And then, as 300 people watched in stunned silence, Marcus Williams closed his eyes, lifted his arms and began to dance. It wasn't perfect. His steps were halting, his balance uncertain. But it was beautiful in a way that transcended technical skill. It was the dance of a soul that had refused to surrender. The dance of a dream that had survived the worst kind of cruelty. The dance of hope made manifest. Richard Blackstone stood frozen, watching this 12-year-old boy dance where minutes earlier he had tried to crush his spirit. The most powerful man in the room was powerless before the sheer force of Marcus's courage. The ballroom erupted in applause, but Marcus barely heard it. He was lost in the music of his own heartbeat, in the rhythm of impossible possibility. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw Richard Blackstone approaching slowly, his face completely changed. The arrogance was gone. The cruelty had vanished. In its place was something the billionaire had forgotten he possessed. Humility. "Marcus," Blackstone said softly, "I owe you an apology. I owe everyone here an apology." He turned to address the crowd, his voice breaking. "I've spent my entire life believing that success meant never showing weakness, never admitting I was wrong. I've made billions of dollars by being harder, colder, more calculating than everyone else." He looked back at Marcus, who had carefully sat down on a nearby chair, exhausted but radiant. "But this 12-year-old boy just taught me something worth more than all my money. He taught me that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about deciding to stand back up, even when everyone tells you it's impossible." Blackstone reached into his jacket and pulled out his checkbook. But instead of writing a donation to the charity, he walked over to Marcus. "I want to personally fund your medical care, your physical therapy, and your dance training. Not as charity, but as an investment in the kind of person I want to learn to be." Marcus looked up at the man who had tried to break his spirit and smiled with a wisdom far beyond his years. "Mr. Blackstone, I forgive you. but I don't need your money to keep dancing. I just needed to remember that the music was always inside me. 6 months later, Marcus Williams performed his first official dance recital. Richard Blackstone was in the front row, tears streaming down his face, having learned that sometimes the smallest person in the room can teach the most powerful lesson of all. That night at the charity gala, a disabled kid took his first dance step in 3 years. But more than that, he taught a billionaire, and everyone watching, that miracles aren't just about what we can do with our bodies. They're about what we choose to do with our spirits. And sometimes, when we refuse to let others define our limitations, we discover we were never as broken as we thought. Some dreams are worth fighting for. Some hopes are worth holding on to. And sometimes, the most profound act of rebellion is simply refusing to give up on yourself.